After a wild weekend in Baku, Formula One heads to one of the hottest, one of the longest, and one of the most grueling races on the schedule. Singapore welcomes the 10 teams and 20 drivers to its punishing street circuit, a massive challenge for both man and machine with a constant threat of rain. Can the McLaren duo rebound from a drop in form in Baku, or can Max Verstappen make it 3 in a row and win for the first time in the Lion City? All that and plenty more to discuss from round 18 of the Formula One World Championship, the Singapore Grand Prix. And you see the fans already here out in full force Thursday in pit lane from Singapore. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Weekend Warm-Up. I'm James Hinchcliffe, joined alongside by former Formula One strategist Ruth Buscombe, F1 correspondent Lawrence Barretto, and our resident racing driver expert Alex Brundle. Guys, welcome to Singapore. This is always such a fun one for everybody. Lawrence, let's start with you. We're in kind of the last third of the season now. It's all flyaway races. What's the vibe? What's the energy? What's the paddock saying as we head into this final stretch?
Well, I always think every time you get on a flight that's longer than 12 hours, it signals the final part of the season. Carlos Sainz called it a bit of a sprint to finish this part of the year. Everyone wants to finish on a high. There might not be updates coming, but there's still a lot to fight for. And the Constructors' Championship, that's tens of millions of pounds between each position. So even if you're not fighting for the Constructors, there's so much that they need to go after. Yeah,
still lots to fight for in this championship, both drivers and constructors. Alex, this racetrack, so unique, such a challenge for the drivers. What are they looking out for here?
It's a hugely challenging race. It's a long Grand Prix, and it's going to feel even longer from behind the wheel. Massively physical, this one. They've got to try and keep that concentration throughout all of those laps as well. Got walls really close to the track, a little bit of weather in the air. We're flat out on the throttle, and we've got Hinch at the wheel. So this is going to be a great weekend.
It's already an unhinged weekend. Lots to unexpect here in Singapore. And look, talking about unexpected, this place can be difficult from a strategy standpoint, but is it one that strategists look forward to, or do they dread the fact that rain can play a part, safety cars can play a part?
I think that's if you're a good strategist or not, Hinch. This is the strategy blue ribbon event. Like, this is the one that if you ask any strategist, they want to win on strategy. It's this race. Sure, it's pretty tricky for the drivers. Arguably, we've only ever had one perfect lap here by Lewis Hamilton in 2018. But forget both drivers, I'm outnumbered this week. It's all about the strategy. It's about safety cars, balancing high degradation, high risk, and so many experimental factors. Rain, lizards, it's all to play for.
Lizards a little bit too often here, it sounds like. But we're going to dive into the strategy a little deeper, a little bit later. But before we get too much into what's happening here in Singapore this weekend, let's take a look back 2 weeks to the absolutely insane weekend that was the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Welcome to Baku City Circuit. This is wide open, this Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
The Azerbaijan Grand Prix is underway.
Piastri has not got away at all.
A horrible getaway for Oscar Piastri. He's in the wall, he's out of the race.
Absolute nightmare.
It reignites the championship. And here we go. Sainz isn't close enough to shape for the move. The two Mercedes side by side. That was punchy stuff from Antonelli.
Sainz is staring down the barrel of a podium here.
Alex Albon's going to make contact. Albon into the back of Colapinto. Norris next to pit.
Oh, it's not a good stop. It's a horrible stop.
McLaren's painful weekend continues.
What a mediocre performance.
Max Verstappen wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Yes, over an unbelievable race, guys.
For the first time with Williams, Carlos Sainz will stand on the podium.
Good operation. Best podium in my career, guys.
Red Bull resurgent. Rule nothing out in Formula One 2025.
I don't think many people had a Verstappen-Russell Sainz podium on their bingo cards heading into last weekend, but that just highlights what a crazy race that it was. And Lawrence, it was a little bit of a letdown for one team. McLaren went into this one kind of really expecting to lock up the Constructors' Championship. It was an off weekend. They didn't get it done. What do you think the atmosphere is in that team coming here trying to rebound?
I agree. It was a weekend no one expected, not least McLaren. I think they come here knowing they've only got to score 13 points. I say only, but it's much more in their hands, I think. And I think they're in the fortunate position that the season has been such a strong one for them. They've put them in such an enviable position at the top of the constructors that actually they can afford that weekend off in Baku and still probably win it here. I think it's 98.1% that they're going to win it here. So I think that's an incredible position to be in when they come in here fighting.
And Alex, I think a lot of people were expecting both McLaren drivers to make a little bit more headway in the race with the inherent pace that car has. They really didn't. Is that just a function of how that car was performing at Baku, or is there more to it?
Yeah, it really was an off weekend, wasn't it? I think there are a couple of factors to it. Firstly, they really benefit from having the rear tyre under control through the races. It's something we're going to see this weekend in Singapore. In Baku, that's less beneficial just with the way that the circuit layout is. They couldn't make their way through the field because the DRS is less effective. But essentially as well, especially Piastri had a real off weekend. You saw the crash in qualifying. Lando Norris didn't exactly get his best lap in Q3 either. It put them out of position. And as we saw with Ferrari as well throughout that weekend, you race where you qualify, and they weren't able to make progress through the field.
And I think on that off weekend, this is the first real test, I think, for Andrea Stella's new mentality at that team, which is trying to kind of positive vibes, even when it's going difficult, kind of never let it get in your head, trying to clear your mindset. So I think a strong weekend here is significant in more than one way, because they obviously just don't want any bad rhythm to kind of continue.
And look, and it wasn't just the qualifying incident for Piastri. Alex, he had issues at the start of the race and then in the lap one.
Yeah, and he really left the door open, I think, for Lando Norris. And I think Norris will be a bit disappointed with only a 6-point swing coming out of the event. Yeah, he's put himself within that 25-point gap to his teammate at the front of the championship, which I think is always a psychological benefit from a driver. You know, you can pick up the championship lead if the driver falters and DNFs. You can see the anti-stall for Oscar Piastri. That was the beginning of the issue, and then later on, of course, at that start, trying to make up the positions. He cleared Pierre Gasly. He was trying to make his way around the outside of Esteban Ocon, and just plain drops it down towards turn 5. So really left the door open there, Piastri.
Is this a function of him not being used to fighting for positions that far back on the first lap of a Grand Prix?
You know, actually, when Piastri found himself in the wall, the first thing they said to Lando Norris over the radio is, watch out for following. So it could well be a factor that McLaren, having been out front throughout the year so far, either, from a team perspective, from a setup perspective, is not that great at following, or just the drivers aren't as used to it as they have been in previous seasons, because they've been so great out front this year.
Ruth, it's only Oscar Piastri's 4th retirement in his career. Ends a streak of 44 consecutive finishes, 34 consecutive points finishes. I mean, obviously a team relishes having a driver with that kind of metronomic consistency, but how tough is it for him and the team to sort of rebound after such a bad weekend?
I mean, when you have a run that long, it's everything working correct, right? It's the driver not making errors, but also it's the team making a reliable car that is built to specification time in and time out. And I think as a driver, when you make those errors, you feel this weight of responsibility, to the guys in the garage, to the engineers back home. All you had to do was see him and watch the race. And that, for me, rather than walking off with your helmet on, which is the international Formula One sign for, I don't want to talk and I don't want to take it in, I thought it was amazing that he sat and actually watched it, a bit like Charles did the previous race.
I like that these marshals are giving up their cell phones for the drivers to watch. I think that was F1 TV. So I really like the choice of the drivers here. Now, it was a tough weekend for Oscar Piastri and a little bit maybe of a missed opportunity for Lando Norris. Only a 6-point swing, Alex, like you mentioned. Is it kind of just bad luck that on the weekend where Piastri has trouble, McLaren doesn't have the dominant race car?
Yeah, you can say that, but also you can also say that Lando underperformed in qualifying. They made a gamble to run him earlier than other drivers that didn't exactly work out. But when you watch the laps, in terms of his estimation of the conditions throughout that final lap in Q3, Lando, for example, wasn't delivering through the wet parts of the track like Max Verstappen was at the end of quali. The slow stop, also a factor in it. They spent a long time managing this right front in order to get it on. But there are other weekends where that McLaren would have driven through from 6th, 7th, all the way to the front of the field and disappeared. So the pace purely wasn't in the car for Lando.
I thought it should have started on hard. And it's that aggression. We saw Max Verstappen starting on that hard tyre, opening to have a catastrophic race if it was a red flag, and then, he'd have to limp home on the medium. I think it's really showing, that aggression from some teams and maybe playing it a little bit safe with other teams, which, of course, you can do as a constructor when you've got such a comfy lead. But the fight between the drivers is anything but comfy. It's a race here. It's turn 1 in Mexico.
Oh, that's what Max had has less to lose, right? It's now 69 points in the Drivers' Championship. He can go for it, and as you say, maybe a little bit less of a conservative strategy.
Yeah, we'll get more into Max's weekend in a little bit, but let's take a look from missed opportunities to seized opportunities. George Russell up on the podium, P2, really capitalized on some of those cars being out of position. And Lawrence, he did it going into a weekend where he was not feeling well.
It's not very often that a driver gets to miss their Thursday driver media duties, Friday and Saturday. It kind of just showed how much of a tough time that George was having with that illness. And we heard him on team radio. It sounded pretty awful, and it was lucky he wasn't actually here in these really hot, humid conditions, a very physical race. He said it himself, Baku's an easier race to be ill at and really struggling. And that he delivered in that way at a time when, you know, they still haven't signed him for 2026. So for him to be pumping in those kind of performances, I think is critical, and it's kind of a message to the team.
Now, look, some strategy was involved on this one, Ruth. Let's take a look at first the pit-in commitment that he had in that pit stop cycle to get around Carlos Sainz. It was absolutely 10/10 on pit-in. When you compare it to Lando Norris, huge difference.
Oh, it's stunning. And these are the kind of details that annoyingly George Russell, when I was racing against him when he was at Williams and I was at Alfa Romeo, was always very, very good at. You know, when I spoke to him about it, he said he took the inspiration from a pit entry that Sebastian Vettel did in Shanghai back when I think he was still a child. But, you know, it's all these details. And with the field as tight as it is, you know, the whole season is spread by 1.3% between fastest and slowest. Those are the margins that matter. And yeah, bravo, George.
And it was a good weekend for Mercedes in general, Alex, with Kimi being right up there. Good day for the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, a driver who was being called underwhelming not too long ago. Antonelli found a better performance. The team were telling me that they're working on trying to find the right environment for him. You know, he's still such a young driver. I think he's a young soul as well. And they feel like they've got that now for Kimi Antonelli. So both drivers performing well, benefiting, I think, for the difficult weekend that McLaren had, and also Ferrari not quite firing on all cylinders. So they will be happy to take those points away and in second, of course, now in the Constructors' Championship. Incidentally, George Russell has confirmed in the press conference he's still not feeling well this weekend. So he'll roll into this weekend still carrying a little bit of illness.
And still doesn't have a contract yet for 2026. Now, as great as Max Verstappen's drive was, which we'll touch on, as impressive as Russell's performance was, I think the heartfelt moment of the weekend was that podium for Carlos Sainz in Williams. Lawrence, I mean, that team, what a boost for that group after, especially on Carlos's side of the garage, a tough stretch of races.
I think it was honestly coming to the point for the first time in his career where he was really starting to doubt himself. I think the run of bad luck that he had to start this year, it normally kind of curved off in previous years. It's normally been a half a season, then he's clipped back after the summer break. But I think that he came back from Zandvoort and Monza, and it was still not kind of clicking for him. And it's always more galling, I think, when your teammate is doing an incredible job and the team are telling you yourself, Carlos, you're doing a great job, and the results aren't really kind of coming through. So I think the scenes that we saw there were an immense amount of relief that he was delivering on that performance.
And Ruth, for a smaller team, a midfield team, how much of a boost is a result like that?
You honestly can't put words into it. And, you know, every race win is special. Every podium is special. But, you know, you saw it with Sauber, with Hulkenberg's podium before. And you can see what it means there. That is not for the cameras. That is pure emotion. And I would say not just for every single individual in Williams. Last time they got a podium was 2021, but that was a bit of a weird race. Not that I'm jealous, because you know I was on the wrong side of it that time. But for Carlos as well. You know, I spoke to James Vowles and I spoke to Carlos. You can really see that both of them, when they left their respective big teams, Mercedes and Ferrari, they didn't know how long it was going to be before they were going to be tasting champagne again. And one thing about a Formula One pit lane, where they are in the pit lane, is you often get the champagne from the race winner on your pit gantry, and you have to clean it off every week. And it's not your champagne. And speaking to the truckies, they were like, it was absolutely brilliant having to clean off the sticky champagne from our own gantry, and it feels much better.
You know, it was vindication as well for Sainz. You know, a driver there who hadn't scored for the last 6 races. He said after the race, I was beginning to worry that people weren't buying it anymore, that I was getting used to the car, and that the performance is going to come. Finishes ahead, of course, of Ferrari, having been bruised after being let go and having to move to Williams. So I think for him, it was a huge moment. And you flagged to me earlier, he highlighted it as the greatest podium of his career, and I think those are the reasons for that.
Yeah, incredible, very powerful message on the radio, on the in-lap. Greatest podium of his life, despite all the ones he's had with Ferrari, including victories, including right here in Singapore. But let's actually hear from the man himself how he felt about that result.
But finally, a result like that, where we were almost on pole on Saturday and a very strong race pace on Sunday, just to bring home a solid podium, was exactly what I needed and exactly what the team deserved, what I deserve, and now it's time to try and do a good little end of the season with the same performance.
Do you kind of see it as a mini season now heading into this final stretch, because it feels like it's finally unlocked for you?
I want to hope so, yeah. I'm going to take it as a sprint to the end now. 7 races flat out. Try and bring the team as many points as possible to secure that 5th in the championship. And use it as a confidence builder for all my engineering team around me, or everyone around me, to go into 26 feeling good, just in case the 26 car brings something good.
Great stuff. Good luck this weekend.
Champagne definitely tasting sweet for Carlos Sainz last time out in Baku. And while he was the emotional driver of the day, guys, the actual driver of the day was Max Verstappen. What a weekend for him and Red Bull. Alex, let's start in qualifying. That was one of the most difficult qualifying sessions I think a lot of these drivers have ever experienced. But once again, Max just maxed it, didn't he?
You know, it's often said of the great drivers that they have a sense for where the grip is before they arrive at the turn, rather than having to judge it based around the last turn or something else. And that, I think, was demonstrated by Max in qualifying, particularly in the wet areas of the racetrack. And then in the race, you know, he just took off with massive speed. They're getting their head around that Red Bull in the slower corners, what the team are saying, and the word in the paddock that they're in the last in the final throes of this regulation set, really getting a sense for a little bit more how they want to run the front end of the car. But Max was truly peerless, wasn't he? So impressive.
He was, and that Red Bull has been very impressive. We had that floor upgrade in Monza, kind of found a bit of pace. Back-to-back wins. Ruth, from the engineering side, is this car capable of continuing this run?
You know, I think it's the team. You know, you look at Max, phenomenal driver, and they just don't leave any margin on the table. We spoke about how McLaren sent Lando out earlier in the session, which is the safer thing to do. They're at the end. We spoke about how Lando started on the medium tyre. They started on the hard tyre. Mech has confirmed what most strategists looking at it thought. That was a driver-driven decision. Max said, the reason why I wasn't able to fight for the win, you know, in somewhere like Monza was because, you know, I was being worried about, you know, the McLarens getting the jump on me, you know, when it comes to extending the stint. If it was going racing here, I want to be on the hard tyre. I don't care about a red flag risk. You know, you look at the pit stops, you look at everything. You know, you look at races where they're just throwing one step softer compound than every single race after it. I think on pure pace, the McLaren is still going to have the edge, but like, do not count out Max Verstappen with a mathematical chance of winning a championship or a race. Plus, if he wins this one, he'll have the full set. And if there's anything that boy likes, it's a record.
I'm really intrigued by something that Max actually said recently, where he said that Laurent Mekies has changed the way that they go about running that team, and they don't kind of focus their weekend preparations on pre-race simulations. They're going more driver-led, and I think that's changed the way that they've approached a Friday practice. And I think you've seen even with Yuki Tsunoda, his teammate, that he's brought through and he's carried that pace through the weekend. I think that's given Max the confidence, the team the confidence to really then go and push it through quali and the race. But this is the big test, isn't it? We've come to a high downforce circuit. If they're good here, maybe, just maybe, it is game on for the championship.
All right, so let's talk about that. I mean, and it seems a bit ironic that they had as a team such a good race, Yuki's best performance, and yet they were mathematically eliminated from the Constructors' Championship. But Alex, down to 69 points in the drivers, and to Lawrence's point, if at a high downforce circuit in hot temperatures, this car works, is it game on?
They're calling it the acid test, aren't they? Because it is also so bumpy here. And that's been another Achilles heel of the Red Bull through this era. All the drivers were asked in the press conference whether they would give a percentage on Max Verstappen winning the championship, and they all ducked out of the question. So I don't know. It's a long way to go, isn't it? It's a long way to go. If there's one driver you'd pick in the field who can do it, it's Max. I think McLaren will return to form here. With the strengths of that McLaren and everything else, I think they've really got their work cut out, but we'll see. Could have a bit of weather in the air, which can only help.
Well, because that's just it, right? It's not just a function of Max and Red Bull performing. You also need McLaren to have more off days, and that's really been few and far between this year.
And it really was an off day in Baku for McLaren. So it was Max versus the rest, which I think is why you saw that gulf.
And it's been a pretty good month for him. Back-to-back Grand Prix wins. And in the middle, he decided to get his license for the Nordschleife. And you're the sports car racing expert here. How impressed are you with his ability to jump right into that GT3 car, first crack at it, and win the 4-hour race there?
Man, that's impressive. Man, that is impressive. To learn that, it's like a rally stage. That racetrack. He jumped in, he got his license, he went about it with an incredible attitude, and then jumps in and wins the race in the top class for the first time. I'm not sure what we were all expecting in the world of sports cars, to be honest, but whatever we were expecting, that's top-tier expectations.
Lawrence, you get to talk to a lot of these drivers every weekend. Does Max stepping out of a Formula One car and into a totally new realm, going out, having the kind of performance that he just did, does that get into drivers' heads a little bit? Like, man, this guy is not just that good here. He is that good in everything on four wheels.
I think it was Ollie Behrman who was just talking about like how frighteningly good Max is when he goes out and he delivers in a completely different championship with very little experience within the realms of all the procedures and everything that he needs to go by. But I think the greatest benefit of that win is for Max's happiness. Like, he's come bouncing into this paddock. The team gave him an extra day off because it was his birthday last week. He's crowd-barreled all his promotional activities into a shorter period, so he loves that as well. And then when you've got a Max Verstappen who's operating at that level, when he feels so good about himself and he knows he's chasing, we rarely see Max as a chaser with a car that really can go after them. I think that's probably the most terrified thing for his rivals, that actually he's showing he can really go after this.
And Ruth, from a team perspective, do you like the fact that you're a team principal? Do you like the fact that your driver wants to jump into other equipment? Does that make him a more rounded driver, or would you prefer to see his focus solely on Formula One?
Well, I think as a good team principal, you've got to recognize what's good for your drivers and what's good for your assets. If their focus is showing a diminished performance, don't do it. If your focus gives a Max Verstappen that's smiling the way we all saw him in the paddock this afternoon. And honestly, you know, I've done a bit of endurance racing too, and it's very cool. And there's so many elements of it that's racing. And a lot of us, well, we love racing. Obviously, you've done a little bit of IndyCar too. And I think, you know, you can see it's that effervescence going into this race. And, you know, this is the one that got away. You know, he probably should have won in 2022 without that turn one incident. And, you know, like, it's still the only race that I can say I led more laps than Max Verstappen. Antonio Giovinazzi, 2019, 4 laps. He's led only 3, so maybe I only get to say that on this weekend warm-up.
Yeah, watch the space. You might beat that this weekend. But Ruth, keep your team principal hat on. We talked about at the top of the show the strategy required to be good here. Walk us through some of the key points of strategy for this weekend.
Okay, so this is such a challenge. Now, it's 62 laps. They've changed the track layout. So we used to have 23 corners. We now only have 19, only 19, because of the structure of the place itself. But it is so technical. And from a strategic point of view, we've got 4 DRS zones, but there's barely any overtaking. Absolutely, qualifying is king here. Now, we've got a bit of a resurfacing that's gone on into turn 16. I asked every single Formula One team, and no one had been out there yet to see whether or not the bump into that turn 16 is going to help improve the overtaking, because they weren't able to overtake on that new 400-meter section. In terms of the track itself, it's all about having the most amount of downforce you can and having as much in terms of ability to ride those bumps. And bumps is something that's really difficult to train for, both in a simulator and as a driver and as an engineer or a strategist simulating it. And so is the tyre stress. If you look at that graphic, you'll see, it's pretty easy on the rear tyres here in Singapore. And it is, in terms of absolute load. But that doesn't tell you half the story. The reality is those rear tyres are screaming because they're getting so hot. In qualifying, it's all about balancing your temperatures, whether it's on the out lap, into the Sector 1, getting Sector 3. Basically, no one's ever got it right here. And then in the race, it's all about managing the thermal degradation. And you saw last year's winning strategy was a one-stop race. It looked super simple, but that's because last year was the only Singapore Grand Prix we've ever had without a safety car interruption. In the first 15 races here, we've had 24. One in every single race. And so going into the race, it's this massive play for strategists as to whether or not you want to go for the undercut, covering off track position, because it's so important, worth about 1.5 seconds, or do you extend and go for the safety car? And this year, they've only got to make the hardest race of the season for strategy even harder by increasing the pit lane speed limit. Right now, it's 80 kph instead of 60 kph, which has dropped the pit loss from 29 seconds by 5.7-ish according to our F1 numbers, to around 23 seconds, which means that if we do get a virtual safety car, if we get a safety car interruption, it's only 11 seconds to take another stop. So it really does tempt drivers in. It's going to be absolutely critical. Plus, because there is more.
But wait,
weather.
there's more.
There is always weather here. Now, forecast here often looks the same. It's literally 27 to 32 every single day, and usually an icon of a grey cloud. That, it couldn't be further from the truth. It's constantly changing. It's a microclimate. You can be sweating one moment and wet the next. And even though, so right now it does look like the highest chance is Friday, we have had rain appear out of literally nowhere. It literally pops up over the circuit here. 2017 was a great example. When we go into the race, we thought it was dry. Then we were all soaked on the grid. And the crossover here is dastardly because all of our data is based off of running in the day. And here it's the night, which means the track dries really fast, then very, very slowly. It goes from 1.5 seconds per minute to completely glacial. And then when the first car that gets on it is 5 seconds a lap faster.
Well, that's how you get around 61, 62 laps of the Grand Prix, whatever it is. But Alex, we talked about how this was a bogey track for Max Verstappen. What do you need to do over one lap? Because qualifying here is going to be important. So talk us through how to get around Singapore.
Well, us race car drivers are one lap at a time.
Yes, absolutely.
That's all we can handle. Across the start-finish line is the only prepared area of the circuit here. Just peaking over 300 kilometers per hour, 3 apexes, 1, 2, and 3. They're diminishing apex speed. You've got to make sure you get out of the exit of turn 3 and down Republic Boulevard through turn 4. The open apex of turn 5 turns you onto Raffles Boulevard, which is the first of 4 DRS zones. Through the middle of turn 6, it's a really difficult braking zone. Down towards turn 7, you've got to make sure you don't overshoot and use too much of that outside curb. It's a slow apex down towards turn 8, and then another street circuit spec roll through 90 degree in turn 9. Then as we head down towards turn 10, it's a tricky braking zone. First you go right, then left, rolling the car through the mid-corner to make sure you're in the right place for turn 11 and across the bridge for turn 12. Slowest apex of the lap is turn 13, and you'll hear drivers short shift to make sure they keep that rear tyre under control through the middle of turn 13 and down towards turn 14. Now the rear tyres are really screaming enough as we have Marina Bay Sands off to our right-hand side and the bright lights screaming through turn 15 where we used to go right, left and right again. Now we head down towards 16 where that bump may have been deleted on the inside. Mid-corner of 17 is tricky under traction, then it's 18 and 19 back onto the prepared tarmac and the bumpy run to the line. Limitation of ride height in those last couple of corners. Under 50% full throttle here, Hinch, which shows you just how much you have to do.
Just how much you have to do and just how challenging this place is. We were watching that lap earlier back in the office and then compared it to the onboard lap from the safety car. It is tough to put into words how fast these cars are going around this track.
You know, this place gets put together for Formula One. So you see Formula One cars pound around here, it becomes the normal speed. When you watch anything else go round here, it looks glacial in comparison. The skill required to keep these cars between the walls, especially when they get a little bit loose, as Ruth was describing on the hot tyres at the end of the lap, is incredible. And we do see errors, even in those drive-through final 2 corners.
Absolutely. All right, here's a look at the weather conditions that we're looking at. I mean, you said it, it can say one thing, but it usually ends up being something else. And don't forget also to get involved in F1 Fantasy, carrying on from Baku to the 2nd straight race in a row. Oracle Red Bull Racing have their own mini league running, the Street Showdown. Make sure you take a look at that and join in. Always fun to play F1 Fantasy. Well, guys, that is about all we have for weekend warm-up. Let's take a quick look at the weekend schedule as we head into Friday, FP1, starting tomorrow evening. You see it there. It's at 5:15 local. That's the first hour of practice. Then you head into practice 2, 8:45. You never know what the weather's going to be into qualifying when it starts to really matter. You've got FP3 and then, of course, qualifying at 9 local, pre and post show there. And then the big day when the points are paid. Pre-race show starting at 7 p.m. local. And then, of course, the Formula One Singapore Airlines Singapore Grand Prix of 2025 starting at 8 p.m. local. Make sure you stick around for the post show after that as well. Guys, start with Alex. What are you looking forward to the most?
I'm really looking forward to the battle around these streets. I mean, back in 2023, we saw the most extreme battle to the line for the Grand Prix here, and also watching these guys take it to the limit under the lights.
Lawrence?
I want to see how McLaren respond after such a difficult weekend, and especially probably Lando, because obviously I think he kind of reacted very differently in the TV pen. He didn't beat himself up. He kind of was much more relaxed and positive about the future. And Oscar, he said a great couple of days in Monaco doing nothing, and that seems to be his best preparation for a Grand Prix. So I want to see how he reacts.
I want to see how the track changes play out into the strategy, but also props to the drivers, you know, for once from me. I want to see a new track record on Saturday,
okay.
which I think we're probably likely to get.
Because 2024 Q3, that was the record, Lando's lap, right?
Yeah.
And you want to see that fall?
Yeah, I want to see it topple.
Well, let's see what we can do. All right, guys, we have lots to look forward to. There are walls, there's weather, there's strategy, and there are 20 drivers that are going to be going for glory, trying to win the Singapore Grand Prix. Make sure you tune back in over the weekend to watch all the action right here on F1 TV. Thanks for watching.
Formula One returns to the original night race venue, one of the tests of the season. And the Singapore Grand Prix is underway. Whoa! He hits him! It is fine margins.
This track, under the lights, is such a buzz.
Spectacular sight in Singapore. It's super close between the two of them. Oh, they make contact. No, it's Russell into the wall. Oh! Driving brilliance. Lando Norris takes the checkered flag. One of the great Singapore Grand Prix. Phenomenal entertainment.